We're here on our third edition, so we're going to call it phase 3 and phase 4 of our new construction project. I'm calling it 3 and 4 because 3 should have been a framing and 4 should be our MEPs. Right now we're doing 3 and 4 together, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about it. We're going to go with framing, then we're going to come back and talk about our MEPs. So right now on the framing, all the framing's done already. We got our doors installed. We got all the bucks, the window bucks, which is the surrounding pressure treated wood around all the windows and doors. Our doors installed, garage installed. But I really want to talk about the trusses for a minute and just talk about the simplicity of the type of trusses we went with. These are floating trusses. None of the walls in the inside of the building are load bearing. So you'll see our trusses are spanned from one side of the block to the other side of the block. Those are our bearing walls. Those are the only bearing walls we have in the house. None of our interior walls in this particular project are load bearing, so it makes it a little bit easier for us, give us a little bit more flexibility. We can move any interior partition walls we want to, and it doesn't require a high grade of wood. So all this wood you see is just regular white spruce wood for our partitions, and anything that's touching concrete is pressure treated. Most of the time you see it very green. Ours got a little green tint to it, but it is pressure treated, and I just want to point that out. You'll see all these little small, what we call 1x2 wood studs. The only reason those are there is two reasons really. One, for our insulation, which can go in between this or on top of this, depending on which type we use. In this particular project, we're going to be using foil paper, right, which is our moisture barrier and minimum R value for our insulation. The other reason for these 1x2s is this is what our drywall will attach to. All right, so when we're ready for drywall, we'll be attaching it to these 1x2 studs all throughout the house. And then that's the bulk of it, the framing here. That's the main thing I wanted to look at. The next thing we're going to talk about is our MEPs. So what is MEPs? We call it our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing subcontractors, which makes up MEPs, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So when you hear us refer to that phrase, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about our subs, our sub trades, our bones to I'll say our meat, because our structure is the bones. So we'll call it MEPs as the meat of the project. Well, I want you to pan up and you'll see that all of our rough mechanical is completed. What is the rough mechanical? Basically, our rough mechanical is our platform where our air handler is going to sit in the inside. All of the duct work that's tied to it is all installed. You'll see our copper lines coming down. That's installed. That is our rough. That's our rough mechanical, which is our M. We'll talk about our E, which is our electrical. All of our rough electric is done. So you'll see all the wires, everything that goes into the skeleton of the project is installed, all our boxes. Our meter is set here on the inside of the garage, and then our meters, our exterior meter or meter main combo, right, where the power will be coming into it, is on the exterior. We'll show you that later. But other than that, right now you'll see the island. The island is here, so we got our electric that'll feed the island. We have our refrigerator here. We have all the plugs for the cabinetry outlets along the kitchen side. I want you to pay attention to that box down and below. That's where our garbage disposal and dishwasher will be fed from. So that's already there. That is the meat and potatoes. That is our E. That is our electrical. Now we want to talk about our plumbing. You'll see right here stubbed out for our sinks. You got cold water, hot water in our drain line. We'll scoot over here in the bathrooms. You'll see as far as our tubs installed, ready for inspection. They're full of water. All the lines are pressurized. No, we're not putting in a green bathtub. This is a protective skin to protect the coating of the tub while we do all the fancy stuff on the outside, i.e. Durock, towel, and things like that. Over here is our walk-in shower for the master. We got that full of water. That's under pressure right now too. So we'll be able to be ready for our inspection. And that is our rough plumbing. Toilets are in. Toilet sewer lines are in. Our plumbing is in for our double sink vanity over there. Our plumbing's in, our stacks are in, going all the way out the roof for ventilation, and that is the P. That is the plumbing part of it. That's our rough. So based on our inspection, which will be tomorrow, we'll most likely get the green light to go ahead and start with our insulation and get going with our drywall. And that's making the house really come together. So if you're the owner and you're looking at your trades, there's certain things that the trades know they have to do. When we get into the potato on what I'm coming to look for, I'm gonna rewind this. We're gonna go all the way back to the beginning, and I'm gonna talk about the things I look for in the trades once I come through prior to this inspection. In the city of Titusville, where this house is, they do one inspection. They do a framing inspection along with MEPs. So they don't look at any framing until the MEPs are done. And most people, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it makes complete sense, because what happened is back in the day, a lot of our trades, our sub trades, our MEP subs would cut necessary wood, whether it was a load bearing wall. They didn't know the difference. They're not a structural and they're not a general contractor. They're just more specific into their trade and what they're doing. So basically a lot of the cities and municipalities said, hey, we'll see it after they're done. Right, we'll look at all your framing at that point. Anything we need to structure around for the plumbing, we could always do that, and they give you a little bit of flexibility. But just to go back and say what I'm looking at, as I come through the door, I'm looking at a couple things. I'm looking at my electrical, I'm looking at my plumbing. I'm saying, is there insulation in it? And what I mean by that, for instance, right here, we had to notch out the block a little bit to be able to get our box in with the proper depth. So drywall will come up to here. You'll see, you'll see that inch left over for drywall. But did they foam around it? Right? Is this an air pocket that air can get in from outside? You'll see up top right there, if you zoom up, is there a fire stop in between the ceiling and the partition walls, or the walls per se? So you'll see that red fire stop foam. And that foam, with the red one, is a 2-hour fire rating. And the clear one is more of a 1-hour fire rating. So I'm looking at things like this. Is all our partition holes done in it? Sometimes they build these from the floor, so by laying down, the nails can be shot up, but I'm making sure they're all sturdy. So I'm actually touching every partition wall as I'm walking through the house. It may look like I'm just leaning on it to a homeowner, but I'm making sure it's nice and sturdy as I'm going around. Same thing over here for our insulation. I noticed my electrical subcontractor got a little loose with the foam, so I'll be asking him to come in, cut this off. My drywall guys shouldn't have to deal with that. My electrical sub should. And although they may not have walked it yet, or their foreman may not have walked this job yet, I've walked it, and I'll just go ahead and make a note to make sure they're taking care of those things. I want to point out one thing in the garage as far as the framing that I always try to look at, because it's one thing that's a simple thing, but a lot of the trades always miss. In this pressure treated butt, so we call it a garage door butt, you got these big nuts that's sticking out of the wall. They were poured when we poured the substructure for the lintel. I want to make sure they all have nuts on them and they're all tight. And you'll see these big washers that's there. So that's one thing that always get missed sometimes by our trades, because they put that buck in, they typically shoot it in, but they need to come back and put those nuts and bolts on. Or I should say washer and nuts on. The other thing we're doing is, when we get here, the electrician's already covered up this panel. And for this inspection, for the most part, no one's really looking at it. But I'm always opening it up to make sure there's enough wire in, and we didn't try to cut anything short that'll cause problems later. Because although nobody else is going to look at it until drywall in, it's going to be my inconvenience if I have to cut drywall so we can get back into this box or run new wire. As far as the plumbing, I like to make sure that our stems, which is sticking out of the wall, are long enough that if we have to make any type of alterations, we got enough to do it. So this plumbing got poured with the downpour on the lintels, and we got enough sticking out. I like to see 12 inches at least sticking out, just so my drywall guys know it's there. Everybody know it's there, and if it's hit, we can address it. And hit being in if the drywall guys make a mistake and screw into that plumbing. As far as the MEPs is concerned, we have what's called the duct layout. It's very important. This is how the AC is going to cool the house. This is how the air is going to circulate through the house. And not only will it circulate, when you think about circulation, we're thinking about both output and input, right? So that circulation, meaning that for that AC to breathe, it has to suck air, and then it has to supply air. And it's very important that whatever's approved, whatever's been calculated, if you will, we kind of follow it. And so I like to take a look at this and look up and make sure the sizes of the ducts are the same. Not saying that my guys take a shortcut, but mistakes can happen. You know, it's hot, we're moving, it's Florida, you know, things can be missed. So we want to make sure the size of the ductwork that's illustrated on the drawing is what actually got installed. Because what we don't want, and it has happened, where we finish a house, whether we sell it or rent it, and we find out that room's not cooling the way it should. And most of the time, the reason is that airflow is being restricted. So we always want to take a look at this. Is our duct layout, you know, it's mounted on here for inspection. It's also mounted on here so we all know what it should be. Come along, we'll talk about the plumbing and things I look for in the plumbing, and then we'll talk about the doors real quick. For the plumbing, the main thing I'm looking for here is these toilet drains are minimum. They should be 12 inches away from the wall. In some cases, if you eyeball it, it could look like 12, but if it's just 1.5 inches short and too close to the wall, it will require a specialized toilet, or you'll have to open up the concrete to move this over. So that's a cost to somebody, whether it's a cost to my trade, if it's a cost to me, or inconvenience to me. So I like to come in with my measuring tape, obviously, and pull and make sure that that's 12 inches. For my tubs, I like to make sure that they're square. Well, why does it really matter? Well, it matters when our tile job goes in. It matters a lot. The other thing I want to look at is, do I have dead wood in that transition from drywall to door rock, which is right by our tub. You'll see here we got a piece of dead wood, which is turned sideways. It has no structural integrity. It's not holding up the building, but it's a good transfer point from door rock to drywall. Same thing on both sides. The other thing I look at on the framing side, I look up towards the side of both at the end of every room. And again, I want to see the same thing. I want to see dead wood. It's a transition place for me to go ahead and screw that drywall in, so it's not just hanging in the wind. Most of the time, if you go to someone's house, maybe they did a custom builder or a real spec home by a big builder, you'll see a little hairline crack in that corner. And most of the time, telltale sign, 99% of the time, is because they didn't screw into any dead wood. So that drywall is kind of hanging in the air at that point, and so any vibration causes it to move and cause those cracks. So we try to avoid that and put dead wood at every transition in the room. So a piece of wood at least 3 to 4 inches before the ceiling ends. That's the main thing I'm walking through looking for. I'm looking for those things on every corner of the house. I'm making sure my door jambs swing right. I'm looking at the spacing in between the door when they open to make sure that everything's square, whether I'm measuring it or I'm just taking out my square out of my van and just making sure the windows and doors are square, because that makes a difference on how they open. Now is the time to get it right. You get it right. I don't mind staying in this point for at least a week. Yes, it will slow down my schedule, but it gives me a chance to look at this 2 or 3 times before I put drywall. Because at that point, it's going to cost me more money to cut out drywall to fix things than it would be for me to catch those things now and address it at probably no cost, because it'll probably be on my trades to come and get it right if a window's not square or anything. So That's what we're looking at this phase. This phase is the phase that really makes everything come together. From this point, once we pass this inspection, this will pretty much be the last inspection until we go for our final in this municipality. They don't do a screw inspection. So from this point, once the drywall up, we're talking about paint, doors, interior doors, baseboard, tile in the bathrooms, kitchen cabinets, and we're ready for our finals. So in the municipalities that do have a screw inspection, basically what they want to see is they want you to go ahead and hang the drywall first. They don't want you to mud or texture it. They want to come in and look at the depth of those screws, the size of the screws, how far did you countersink them or screw them in, if you will. And then they want to look at the pattern of it. Are they every 9 inches or whatever municipality rule is for that point? Yes, Florida Building Code is our standard, but some municipalities do have tighter or more stricter rules on it. So that's what they want to see on a screw inspection. And that slows us down for a day because in these small homes, small spec homes that we're building, you know, there's 1,700 square feet. Our crews can pretty much go ahead and drywall this whole thing in one evening or half a day, and they're ready to go ahead and start doing the mudding and texturing. So with that screw inspection for the municipalities who do have them, it calls us to stop, go ahead and wait for that inspection, and then come back out before we can start mudding and texturing. But, you know, those are the things that have to happen. We got to do it. Yeah, time's not our friend. If we get stuck at this point, we're pretty much good to go. All this wood is good for 100 years, so it can sit here. It being exposed to the weather is not a problem. And I say that because currently the roof is dried in. So nothing inside of this house at the moment can get wet. Yes, moisture can come through, but since we don't have drywall up, it wouldn't really damage anything. And that's the reason why we use pressure treated wood on everything that's touching concrete. Because although concrete can allow moisture to come in, with that wood being pressure treated, it wouldn't affect anything. That wood is made to be able to take on a little moisture, dry out, or just repel that moisture barrier.